boys and girls of New Prospect School, Open Roads, and St. Joseph's. Can you hear me okay? Okay. And the teachers as well. I'd like to say hello to the teachers. And Miigwetch for being here today. Miigwetch means thank you. So the question that I'm going to go through right now is from New Prospect School. There are 15 questions. So I will begin, and if you have a question at any time, you can stop me and then give your feedback. Does everyone have a spirit name and color? And the second part of the question is, where do you get them from? So I'll just share the experience for myself. Was the spirit name came to my maternal grandfather before I was born. And then when I was born, my grandfather did the ceremony for me to have my spirit name and the colors. So my colors are white and really dark brown. So that's how I got my spirit name. Other people have gotten their spirit name as infants or as young children, teenagers, and adults. There is no particular age for you to get a spirit name. So that's, and usually people will go to an elder with tobacco and ask the elder if they could give them a spirit name. And then the elder will take that tobacco and pray with it and get in touch with that person that came to ask for the spirit name and do the ceremony. But that spirit name has to come to the elder either in a vision or a dream. That's the one for number one. Number two is, how do you smudge and why do you do it? So I'm just going to demonstrate for you here. I have some sage here, and you just take it off of the stick. You can smudge with sweetgrass as well, and I have some here to show you. This is sweetgrass, and that's also can be added or smudged on its own. Many people will smudge with what they call the four medicines, which is sage, sweetgrass, cedar, and a little bit of tobacco. That's what's known as the four medicines for that. So this is sage burning in this smudge bowl. So how you would do this is you would bring the sage smoke towards yourself, and you would bring it to your eyes to see good things. Bring it to your ears to hear good things, and to your mouth to speak good things. And then you would bring it to your chest area, to your heart, to feel good things and positive, and to stay positive. So that's what the smudge is about. So in answer to your question, why do you do it? It's a cleansing. You're cleaning yourself with that sage, or if you use the 4 medicines, it's the same. It'll cleanse you. And so that's it for number 2. How do you learn how to do powwow dancing? So for me, again, I'll say I was raised with the traditional and spiritual ways from my grandparents. So I learned how to dance powwow from a very early age, probably since I started walking, and I don't know what that age was for me. In more recent years, people will learn from others that are powwow dancers. There are powwow dancers that will give instruction for dancing, and also the teachings that go along with it. So that's it for question 3. And then question 4 was, how do you get eagle feathers? So I have an eagle feather here, which is belongs to the center. And I believe it was gifted to the Friendship Center gifted to them to look after and be protective of the Friendship Center and all the people that work here and all the people that come here for services. And why are number 5 is why are eagle feathers important? So in our culture, especially around this area, eagles are known as very spiritual birds, and they help us in our dreams and our direction in life. Again, remaining very positive. Many people have their names connected to the eagles, and it's very important that they show respect always to that eagle. Number 6, how do you get your spirit animal? I'm not quite sure about that question, but I think it means how, I think it's connected to the naming, and I believe it's, so when you get your name, for instance, when I got my name, my grandfather told my parents that the eagle, all the eagles that are here, like the bald eagle and the golden eagle, were my spirit guides. And also the thunderbirds, which are when the thunder comes and you hear that rumbling, it is our teaching that there are thunderbirds within that storm. That's the way I can explain that. Did you learn how to hunt or fish in a different way than the way we do now? No, there was 2 ways of fishing. When I was growing up, my grandparents had a fish net, which is put in the water, and it could be like up to 300 feet long, and they would set the fish net in an area where they would know that the fish are going by in a certain direction, and they would then get those fish. And back in the day, they had sleigh dogs, so a lot of the fish were food for the sleigh dogs as well as for us. Hunting is much what was always the same. You would use some sort of gun to go out hunting, and in a very safe way. And there are teachings around fishing and hunting. There are certain times that you cannot fish because the fish are spawning. They're laying their eggs for more fish. Also, in hunting, our people never took a female moose, for instance, that's going to have babies. They would not take that moose. Number 8, what are the traditional medicines? I explained to you about the 4 medicines here, the sage, the sweetgrass, cedar, and a little bit of tobacco for smudging. But there are literally hundreds of traditional medicines. So yeah, there's a lot of them. And number 9, why don't you marry people in your clan? The reason why our people could not marry into the same clan is I'm Lynx clan, so I would not be able to marry another person in the same clan because it is viewed that you are related to your fellow clan member. So whether or not it's your close relative, like your cousin or whatever that may be, or you're not related by blood, you still cannot marry your clan. Number 10, can you explain why clans are so important? So back in the day when the clan systems were so active, they had many elders that would talk about the clans and the teachings from each one, and there are teachings for each one of the clans, and it's quite lengthy. Number 11, what are different types of spirit animals? I could say that pretty much every animal, of course, has a spirit. Anything living has a spirit. Plants, trees, the rocks we use for sweat lodge, all of those are living things. The soil is the living thing. So if that answers the question, there are many, there are hundreds of different spirit animals. Number 12, how do you get lessons and teachings given to you? Usually the lessons and teachings came from grandparents or great-grandparents. It was their role to teach the young children, their grandchildren or great-grandchildren. They would do this, if they lived close enough, they would do it on a daily basis. Number 13, why do adults and kids get the same lessons? I'm not sure of that question, but if the adults are present when the grandparents or great-grandparents or other spiritual elders are giving the teachings, they do not concentrate on only one area. Like they won't say, well, if the kids are getting teachings, it doesn't mean that an adult cannot join. Anyone is welcome to the teachings, and they would be called like teaching circles back in the day. And number 14, how do you heal with items in nature? I assume this is about traditional medicines. So in our teachings is pretty much all plants are there for healing, and that you would use pretty much anything on the land for healing, but you have to know what those plants are used for. Number 15, what tips did your mother or father give you for hunting when you were a child? Always safety. We were taught from a very young age how to be safe when you're out on the land, and how to take precautions about where you are going, and you don't go alone. You always have someone with you. Those are the questions for New Prospect School, and thank you for those. So now we move on to Open Road School. I would like to welcome Open Road School and their teacher or teachers. And the first question from Open Road School says, where are you from? Currently, I live at Wabigoon Lake First Nation. In the language, it's called Wabigoon. And number 2, what medicines grow outside in our region? As I said in the other question, is there are medicines that grow everywhere on the land. When we pick medicines, we try and go to a clean area. By that I mean, when I say clean area, is where there aren't any dogs or pets. That's what we were taught, is to go out on the land, further in the bush, and pick it from a clean area. Number 3, what are jingle dresses? Jingle dresses are called healing dresses and medicine dresses. This is a very huge honor to be able to dance in a jingle dress. I don't have a sample of one here today, but they are very beautiful. What are tobacco and sage used for? As I mentioned before, sage is used for smudging, and you also put just a little bit of tobacco with that and your sweetgrass and cedar. Those are the 4 medicines. Number 5, what are some sacred items? There are many sacred items. I will mention the most common ones are the sacred feather, of course. This is a sacred item. The eagle feather, but other feathers as well. Some people have hawk feathers. There's other people that'll have their regalia made out of goose feathers, wild goose feathers. There are many birds with big feathers are used in Pau regalia as well. The pipe is also a sacred item, the sacred pipe, and also the drums. They're also sacred items. Number 6, what are some teachings that go along with life events? So with that one, I will use myself as an example. When I became from a child to a woman, which is important in our culture, you go through ceremony during that time when you're becoming a young woman. You are told by your grandparents and great grandmothers or whoever is teaching you that you will not be allowed to eat wild berries or anything from the land for 1 year, for 12 months, from the time that you start being a young woman. And also there is a ceremony with that's pretty lengthy, where you are entering that womanhood, and you are very special in that regard, because you are then becoming a life giver. Number 7 is, how do you know your spirit animal? Again, you are told when you get your spirit name, the elder or grandparent, in our way, is that grandparent will tell you who your spirit animal is at that time. Number 8, do you have any stories? Yes, I do, and I don't know if we have the time to do it, but we
absolutely.
Do we? Okay. Okay, so the story I can share one of them where we lived with my grandparents when I was a young child. My mother died when I was very young from tuberculosis, TB it's called, and she got that from residential school and got sick, and she died really young. So my father and his parents and some of my aunts and uncles lived in close by to where my grandparents lived, and we would play behind the buildings, behind the houses, and there was kind of like a rocky hill. And we would go up there and make pretend houses, like playhouses, out of rock, and we would make like rooms and like make it a big house. And we enjoyed doing that. And we always played together. Our cousins and all our relatives would come and join in, about the same age group. Some children were a bit younger, but we always helped them if they needed help, smaller ones. Number 9, can you tell us about residential schools? Yes, I can. I am a survivor of residential school, and it was not a very good place to be. It was very restricted on what you could do. And we weren't allowed to speak our language, and the teachers were quite strict and abusive most of the time. Number 10, can you tell us about your language? So I speak Anishinaabe, which is Ojibwe, this area. I also am able to converse with people that speak Ojibwe. I worked up in the north up until about a year or so ago in mental health. What is the name of your community? So I told you, this is St. Joseph's questions, sorry. And number 1 is, what is the name of your community? And that, as I mentioned, it's Wabigoon in the language, and Wabigoon Lake First Nation in English. Number 2 is, what languages do you speak? I mentioned Ojibwe, and I can converse in Ojibwe as well. Number 3, can you tell us about 2 experiences that you have learned from your elders? There's one I can tell you about where my grandmother and I would set rabbit snares in the winter time, and she taught me how to, that was my first lesson in walking on snowshoes, and she taught me how to do that in a safe way so that you don't hurt yourself or break your snowshoes. You had to have you had to know how to navigate on the land. The other one would be, I guess what I mentioned before, is setting the net. I was taught how to be an assistant to my grandparents in setting the net in the winter, which is different. It's more work in the winter to set a net for fish, and then setting a net in the summertime when there is open water. There are two different ways to do that. And then number 4, what do you do for a living? Currently I'm working as a mental health counselor part-time in my community as well as the surrounding communities. I left Dryden Regional Mental Health Hospital, or Dryden Regional Hospital, about 2 years ago. I worked there for 10 years as a mental health and addictions counselor, as well as patient navigator and interpreter for Indigenous people. Number 5, do you eat or cook traditional food? And then there's recipes from elders or hunt. No, I have to say no to hunting because I carry a sweat lodge and I carry sacred items. When you do that, you cannot hunt or kill any animal. And yes, we do eat traditional food. My husband and I, we eat moose meat, we eat fish, we eat mallard ducks, we eat muskrat if we can get it. We both like muskrat, that is when it's smoked, and yeah, that's what we still like to eat, that type of food. Number 6, when you were 12 years old, what did your community look like? So I was in residential school from 7 to 13. But our community, I remember before I was 7, it was one road from one end of the community to the other, and there were houses, and there weren't very many, maybe 5 or 6 houses at the time that I remember, and it was basically a lot of land around the houses and a lot of trees. So, but it was our community, and I liked going there. Back in the day, a lot of people lived on the trap lines, because that was the way to survive. Is you trapped, your grandparents or your parents trapped fur-bearing animals, and then sold them for money to be able to buy your supplies, food and tools and supplies, everything that you needed for the trap line. Number 7, what are your hobbies? Oh, I like to sew. I do sewing, like with a sewing machine. I like to garden. I really like gardening. And it's not a hobby, but I work with traditional medicines on the land. Number 8, could you tell us about your elementary school and what it was like? I had mentioned residential school already, so that was my experience. It wasn't the best, but I'm still here today. Number 9, do you have grandchildren or siblings? Yes, I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. My 2 sisters and 1 brother live in Kenora, Ontario, and I have an older brother that lives on Wabigoon First Nation as well. And I have 3 grandchildren from my son, and I have 2 grandchildren from my 1 daughter, and I have 1 more grandchild from my other daughter, so I have 3 children. So yes, and they're very dear to me. Do you follow the 7 grandfather teachings? Yes, I try my best to. They're difficult teachings to follow, but we try our best. I try my best to follow those teachings. Do you enjoy nature? Yes, very much so. I'm out on the land quite often during the week, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week. 3 or 4 times a week I'm out there picking medicines, and yeah, it's a little bit challenging in the winter, but I still do it. What is your spirit? I guess that means what is my spirit name, I guess is what you're asking. And it's Ogimabine Sikh. My grandfather, as I told you, gave me that name, and I was given that name before I was born. Number 13, do you still eat traditional food? And yes, I do. I just mentioned that we eat all those foods like moose, fish, rabbit, muskrat. Yeah. Number 14, do you have a favorite tradition? I can't identify one tradition that I like more than the other, but I certainly enjoy going into the sweat lodge. It's a very good cleansing and healing. And that's the end of the questions.
All right.
Okay.
So we can ask them if they have any questions.
Do you have any questions for me? There are no wrong questions. I'll try and answer if you have any other questions besides the ones you submitted for me. Yes?
I have a question.
Okay.
Wasn't really a question.
Yep.
I just want to tell you. I'm Akwe clan.
Oh,
Bear clan.
nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Yes?
Then you won't be able to hear. Just mute the speakers on the wall.
Okay.
I have a question.
All right.
What are your grandkids' names?
My grandchildren's names? I have a granddaughter that's Jada. She goes to high school. I have a grandson that's Jackson. He goes to high school. And Josiah, he goes to high school. And I have Allie, who is done her schooling. She has a master's in business. And I have Emma, another granddaughter. She's going to school. She's going to university in Thunder Bay. And I have Cade, who is done with school and working for a mine, I believe, in Red Lake. Okay? Yes?
I have a question.
Okay. We had some feedback there for a bit. I couldn't hear your question. Can't hear the question.
They might come back.
Okay.
St. Joseph's was asking about the name of the residential school that you attended, if you want to tell them.
Oh, okay. The residential school I attended was St. Mary's in Kenora, Ontario. Okay. I can't hear your question though. Are you asking a question? Sorry. Oh,
I know a few chats didn't pop out through.
is it? Like that one there was?
Does anybody else want to ask a question?
Okay, there's a, okay. Is it?
Yeah.
My grandpa was in a residential school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, many of us were. Many of us, my generation in particular, many were in residential school. I think the last residential school closed in 1996. That's not that long ago, really. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
I think there's a hand up in the bottom.
Okay. Uh-huh.
This one's a bit. And then my stepmom, Diana, one of her uncles died. So then she went to go to Pick River,
Mm-hmm.
and then to go check it out. And then the day after, my dad smudged.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Smudging is very good for grief as well. So for those of you that do smudging, it's a good thing to do with your parental supervision is good because you're quite young children yet, right? Yeah. Any more questions?
Do you want to ask if St. Joseph's has any questions?
Who?
St. Joseph's, the computer on the right.
Okay. Does St. Joseph's students have any more questions for me? No, I don't think so. I don't see any hands up.
So it's still 10 to 12. We have a lot of time.
I
If you
know.
want to talk to them about anything else.
Is there anything else that I could share with you that you've been thinking about or a question you might have? Yeah.
Can you cut?
Oh, oh, sorry.
The camera's still on. Oh, there we go.
Can you explain what it was like in the residential school?
It was so the government, I guess, back in those days, they wanted to take all of the young children. Some of them were very young, like 3 and 4 years old sometimes, to a building or a big school building, and they took them there and they stayed there, like they stayed there for months, years, and it was so when I went to residential school, I'll just use myself as an example. My first language was Anishinaabe. I did not know English before I went there. So when I got to residential school, in the classroom, going into the classroom, the language was English. So that's one language I had to learn, and then going to when the nuns and priests were teachers, and so the nuns and priests, when they talked to each other, when they conversed with each other, it was French. So I had to learn French, and then the religious part of it was Catholicism. So when we went to Mass, we had to learn Latin. So there was 3 languages I had to learn when I went there. And it was quite difficult because I was Ojibwe speaking child.
I see there's a lot more hands up from some of the students at Open Rose, but you might not be able to see their hands up in the chat if you only have a couple of videos up.
Yeah, no, I can't see them, sorry.
Okay.
So they can ask.
Okay, so why don't, like, if we just name the people after each question, then you can at least acknowledge that, because some of them have questions that you might not be able to hear.
Sure, okay.
Okay, so you want to ask your question?
Are you Ojibwe or
I'm Ojibwe. Oh, well, no one is full anymore. We all have a mixture in our background. So, but I was my ancestors were Ojibwe and Cree on my dad's side of the family.
How old were you when you went to residential school?
7.
I see Paul has his hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
No, not anymore.
Again?
I can't hear you. What's that?
He's on mute, I think we'll figure it out.
I think your microphone is on mute there. Yeah, okay.
No, I actually left my hand raising up.
Oh, he didn't have a question.
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
answer my question.
St. Joseph's was asking where you're born.
Where I was born? I was born here in Dryden. It was called the Red Cross Hospital at the time, here in Dryden. This is where I was born. My parents were from this area.
Do you have a question?
Yes.
There's feedback sometimes. It's difficult to hear sometimes.
Cars in the back, like birthdays and all that.
Sorry, what's the question?
Did you guys used to have cars like in your days?
Yes, yeah, there was cars. There was cars, yes.
St. Joseph's, it's okay to unmute if you have any questions you want to ask Kathy.
Do you have a question? I see your hands up, but your emoji hand's not up. I don't see any more hands up, Kathy.
Okay, all right. No more hands up.
No more hands up?
No, no.
Is there anything else you want to tell them about? We're still like half an hour early.
Yeah, we've gone through this fairly quickly. I don't really have too much more to say. I like working from Q&A, like I'm used to having
Prompts.
someone asking me questions, because our traditions and our spiritual ways are so vast. I wouldn't know which area you have questions about. Sorry.
Can you teach us how to say some Ojibwe words?
What's that?
Teach them how to say some Ojibwe words.
Okay. What kind of Ojibwe word would you like to learn? Like, do you want to learn? Do you want to learn how to say dog or cat or those kind of things? Okay. So a dog in Ojibwe is a nimush. Can you say that? A nimush. A nimush is a dog. Okay. A cat is pourgens. Cat is pourgens. Pourgens, yeah, that's a cat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you spell Ojibwe?
How do I spell Ojibwe?
Because there's many different ways to spell it.
There's different ways of spelling it, but I usually spell it Ojibway. Ojibwe, yeah. But some people will spell it Ojibwe. So there's different ways people spell it, yeah. So the other one is, the other word might be house. Your house is Wakaigan. Wakaigan. That's house. School is kind of lengthy. It's Kinatmatiugamik. I think Open Roads, you have a language teacher?
Miss Kitchener.
Yes, I know her very well from Eagle Lake.
I'm in her class at the end of the day.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So yeah, and her name, or any teacher's name would be, female would be Akwe, which means teaching lady. Is there a hand up? Has his hand up? What's your question?
Do you have any traditional stories?
Do I have any traditional stories? What type of traditional stories? Could you?
Doesn't really matter.
Okay. I guess a traditional story for me would be, again, going back to my childhood before age 7. My grandparents would travel to different places for traditional gatherings like powwows and ceremonies, for name giving and different things like that. And oftentimes we would travel to Kenora area, like there's a First Nation there which is called Ojashkunigam, which is Rat Portage First Nation. So they knew people there. They knew people from Shoal Lake 39 and Shoal Lake 40. And they all speak. Back in the day, everybody spoke the language. Like I said, very few people spoke English. So we would go to those communities and we would share, they would share stories. The elders would sit around the fire and share stories about their experiences, and we would go there and they would be exchanging gifts, sometimes food. Sometimes my grandparents would take dried meat that they smoked or fish that they smoked, and it was a custom to take something when you went to visit another area. And as well, those people from that area you went to would also give you some sort of gift. That sometimes it was food, sometimes it was moccasins or blankets or beadwork. Yeah, it was a different time back then.
Excuse me.
Yes?
How do you say painting in Ojibwe?
How do you say what?
Painting.
Painting? Is it Jobig Ege would be painting, like painting a wall or a house. That's Jobig Ege. Okay?
Amanda wanted to ask you about dreams.
Dreams?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm being told that someone asked about dreams. So, if you have a dream and you're unsure about what that dream means, you can approach an elder with tobacco, and you could tell them your dream, and that elder will tell you, maybe not right there when you offer your tobacco, but that elder will come back later or contact you later and tell you whether they had a dream or vision about what your dream was about. Okay?
Do you want to maybe explain offering tobacco a little bit?
Okay. So, oh wait, Dinabandam, or Inabadamuin, which is a dream, yeah.
Excuse me.
Yes.
How do you say dream catcher?
What's that? Sorry?
Dream catcher.
Dream catcher?
In a big way. Yeah.
Dream catcher in Ojibwe. The only thing I could say about a dream catcher is we didn't have dream catchers in this area when I was young. That came from the south, actually. The south area and the west area. We didn't have dream catchers here, but I remember people explaining about it, and it's representative of, say you have a dream catcher and you put it on your window or anywhere in the room. The story behind it is that when you have a dream catcher, say in your bedroom, the dream catcher will catch the negative dreams that could come to you, and only the good dreams you will have. That's what I was told about a dream catcher.
Yeah, when I was young, my dad made one for me, and I'm pretty sure I still have it.
Yeah.
It worked for a little while, because I got cats now, and they started playing with like feathers on it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then the other thing I can share with you is the shawl dance. I don't know if many of you know the fancy shawl dance. The young girls dance with fancy shawls. That also comes from the south. That teaching of shawl dance is not from here. It was introduced, I think, in the 70s to our area here. I think it first came to Kenora. Okay?
Can you tell us about hoop dancing?
That also is a new one, but they had, when I was growing up, there was a hoop dancer, but with one hoop only. Are you talking about the multiple hoop, like many of them? I believe that there's a story there's a different story for each hoop dancer. So if you see a hoop dancer somewhere, you would go offer them tobacco and ask them to tell you about their hoops and what they represent. I have seen hoop dancers dance and interpret their hoops to the crowd. There was one at Eagle Lake, and it was a young man, and he said he could make his hoops to represent a big circle, like a big round ball, and his story was that's representative of the world, and how we as Anishinaabe people always pray for the world, everyone, like all races of people we pray for. And that's the yellow people, the black people, the red people, and the white people. When we do prayer, we pray for everyone, all the time. Whether it's in the sweat lodge, whether it's a pipe ceremony, we do that. That's the teaching I got from the grandparents I knew, and the great-grandmother I knew. Any other questions? Does that answer your question? Okay.
Do you want to talk more about offering tobacco to elders?
Okay. So when you offer tobacco to an elder, this is the way I was taught, again by the grandparents that I knew and the great-grandmother that I knew. So tobacco usually comes in a little pouch, and what you do is when you offer tobacco to the elder, you would take the tobacco out of the pouch, some of it, with your left hand, and then you would offer it to the elder, and then you would give the rest of that pouch to the elder after you've offered your tobacco with your hand, and then ask your question, and be as clear as possible when you're talking to an elder. Okay? Is that what you think it should be? Or? Yeah. Okay, yeah. And also remembering that tobacco is a plant, and that it's a sacred, it's one of the sacred 4 medicines. Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear that.
I think that might
Is that the,
you, I
is it? Are you asking a question? Sorry, I can't hear you. There's one there with a question, but I'm not asking it now. Did I miss your question there? It's Dakota Norris, I think it is.
So from St. Joseph's, do you have a favorite part about your childhood?
Oh yes, okay. So there was a question, do you have a favorite part of your childhood? So for me, it was always being with my grandparents on the land and learning from them. I really enjoyed that part of my life as a child, and learning how to, like I mentioned before, setting snares with my grandmother. Learning how to walk on snowshoes and on the land properly. How to be safe when the ice is dangerous on the lake. What do you need to do? And going on the land with someone else, not by yourself. So, are there more questions on that side? I can't see. No? Okay. And then I guess I can share the teaching of a spiritual teaching about fasting. Again, that was done years ago at the beginning of your, for girls, before they're becoming of age to be a young lady, and the boys before they became young men. Puberty. And so at that time, girls and boys were put out on a fasting ground where they would go out and fast, and the length of time was different for each individual, but the time that people generally went out to fast is 4 days and 4 nights without food and water. But you had a person that was responsible for you, that put you out to fast, because you would go in a sweat lodge before the fast. There would be a feast before the fast, and then that's the evening before you would be put out to fast. And then the next morning, the elder would take you out to put you at the sacred fasting grounds, usually with other people, at least one other person. So that was done probably between the ages of 11 to say 15 perhaps, in that age range. Yeah. That was a common practice in this area.
I actually have a question about the womanhood ceremony.
Yeah.
You had mentioned earlier that they weren't allowed to eat, was it berries?
Berries, all berries, yeah.
Yeah, so, and that's for a year. Why is that?
Because when young women in particular are very, when we become from a child to a woman, that's a very powerful time for because we are life givers. So it's a very powerful time, and out of respect for our Mother Earth, we leave those berries for 1 year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah.
Do you want to maybe tell them about ribbon skirts and ribbon shirts?
Okay. She's asking me to tell you about ribbon skirts and ribbon shirts. So now in 2021, which is different from when I was growing up, ribbon skirts and ribbon shirts are worn quite often. Back in the day when I was young, you received a ribbon skirt if it was directed by the spirits for you to have a ribbon skirt, and what colors those should be. Same with the boys or men. They received a ribbon shirt with certain colors, but usually that was at the direction of the spirits through ceremony. So it's different now. I would say more of a fashion to wear, and they're very beautiful. I really like the ribbon skirts and ribbon shirts, but the teaching was different back when I was young. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. The jingle dress. I know you asked about the jingle dress, and so I can tell you the story about how the jingle dress came to be. And this is a story of a grandfather, and it's Whitefish Bay by Sioux Narrows. That was the community where the jingle dress came from. And the grandfather's granddaughter was really sick. The granddaughter was really, really sick, and she wasn't getting any better. So during one night, the grandfather had a dream about making his granddaughter a jingle dress, and that it was going to be a healing dress for her. And I believe it also came with a song, traditional song. So when the grandfather woke up the next morning, he shared his dream to the rest of his family about what he's supposed to do for his granddaughter. So he made the jingle dress for his granddaughter and got her to wear it and dance, and she got better. But she was very sick. So that's the story of the jingle dress and how it came to be in this area. So it's a healing dress. Some people call it a medicine dress, but it has to be very, very respected. Yeah.
Do you want to tell them maybe about the bear root that you're having bring up?
The bear root?
Yeah, the jar.
Okay. So this is bear root that we use for, it's ground up, it's in the jar here. It's used for different medicines. You can add it to different medicines, and it's a very healing root. It doesn't grow in this area. as far as I know. It grows in Alberta, I believe, in BC. It's not the easiest thing to get, but that too can be used as a smudge. Like when you burn the sage, you could put bare root, just a sprinkle of it on top of the sage, and it really has a nice smell. I also use the bare root in the sweat lodge for a smudge when the grandfathers come into the sweat lodge. A little bit of bare root is sprinkled on each one of them. But the bare root is has become very, very important to this area, even though it doesn't grow here. We haven't been able to find it here anyway, as of yet. The same thing with sage. The sage that we smudge with is really not from this area. That also came in the 70s, early 70s, I believe. It grows mostly in the western part of the country, but it has been seeded in this area, like through on the railway track. Beside the railway track, sometimes people will find sage, or some people will transplant it from seed and make their own patch of sage. Sweetgrass grows in this area. It's always been in this area, and it's been used for medicines for many, many years, hundreds of years probably, but that grows locally.
Is there a story about like when you go to harvest the sage, you put like jelly beans out? Cheryl was telling me one time.
Oh, when I go pick sage, I usually offer tobacco for sure. But there are certain spirits that like candy. They do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Usually when you go pick, again, my teachings from my grandparents is when you pick any type of medicine on the land, you are to offer your tobacco, but also berries. My grandparents always offered berries. So I think because we didn't have candy, right? It was like they would offer like blueberries, raspberries, and whatever. Yeah.
So what's the process when you're offering tobacco to the land instead of a person? Is it the same with the left hand? And
Offer, yeah. And when I go on the land to pick medicine, I use generally I'll use a generous handful. I know some people will offer a pinch of tobacco. My youngest daughter does that. And I always tell her, you need to give more. So
yeah, don't be stingy, eh?
Yeah, don't be tight with your tobacco. Yeah. So but again, I go back to the teaching I had, and my great grandmother was a great teacher too and she spent time with the children and taught us the proper way to do things, and I really appreciated the time I spent with her. Yeah. So yes, any other questions? Can't see this. That print is too small for me to see anything. On that side.
Oh, that is tiny, yeah.
I think
I think you've got them all.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you answer the one about a favorite part of your childhood?
Yeah,
You did? Okay.
about going out on the land with my
Oh,
grandma.
she's got her hand up over here.
Okay. Yeah.
the tobacco?
Tobacco? For me right now, I get it from we have a community store on Wabigoon Lake First Nation, and that's where I get the tobacco from. But there's also, I could share this with you. Before tobacco, like the tobacco plants grow in southern Ontario in the warmer climate a bit from us, but I've known people to grow it here, natural tobacco. My grandparents made their own tobacco from the inside bark of a red willow. So, and again, I don't have that prop with me here to show you what red willow is, but it's very common in this area. So you wouldn't use the outside bark, but the inside bark before the wood of the willow. That's what they would use for tobacco. And the other thing I can mention is sage, like the sage you use for smudging. It can also be used as a medicine. And also the sweetgrass can be used as a medicine, like in a tea. You could put a little bit of sage in a pot of water and boil it for a bit and then strain it and drink it. It's a very good medicine. The same with sweetgrass, and cedar is well known in this area as a medicine drink.
What sort of things might you be treating with those medicines?
It depends on the request. So the best way I can explain that is sometimes sage can be used for skin rashes. And what you would do is you would boil it a little bit, make it kind of strong. Then you would strain it and you would dab, say you have a rash or something is wrong with your skin, it's rashy or sores. You would use a cotton ball and dip it in the sage water and then dab it on your sore or your rash. And then you take that cotton ball and put it out on the land. You wouldn't put it in the garbage. So that's the way it is. I know there are probably different, recipes or directions with books and other information on the internet, but the way I learned, again, going back to my grandparents, is you have to be given that direction to use that medicine. You have to be given specific direction to use that medicine for a specific person. And there's ceremony that goes with it as well. So, in my learning, I guess you could say, I did learn from my great-grandmother, which is 3 generations before me. See what I mean? 3 generations back. Yeah. So, yeah. The ways of our people back then was quite strict, but also very caring and loving. It was a nice time to be learning from the people that were around, especially, like I said, my great-grandmother was really willing to share and patient and wanting to teach children.
And now you're doing the same thing.
Now I'm doing the same thing. Yeah. And we're told that they're still here spiritually.
Of course.
They still lead us. Yeah. All right. Any questions from anyone else?
It's almost lunchtime, so we can finish up.
Okay.
If there's no more questions.
Is that? I can't see it.
So Kevin's on his way to bring everybody a pizza lunch. Lunchtime will be soon. If there's no more questions, we can end our virtual youth and elders gathering.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening, and have a nice day to all of the 3 schools that participated.
Thanks for all your questions.
Miigwetch for being there. Bye.
Are you gonna hear from the teachers or?
I don't know.
We can leave.
I guess so.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
See ya. Miigwetch.
There it is.
Okay.
All right, that was awesome.
Miigwetch.
Yeah. Was that okay?
That was
Amazing.
wonderful.